Welcome back to the Sage audio channel. Today we'll be answering the question, what is the difference between distortion and saturation? We'll be covering the differences between the two, defining some key terms like harmonic generation and soft knee compression, and then listening to some tape, tube, and transistor saturation plugin emulations to better understand the differences. So stick around for the full video, but first, if you're an artist, engineer, or producer, and you have a mix that you need mastered, you can send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample of it. All you gotta do is set up the short account, upload the song, and we can do the rest. So, what is saturation? Well, although saturation is a term that's thrown around a lot today, its origins lie in a very real and particular phenomenon in electrical components. Now, when an electrical component can no longer handle the incoming electrical signal, its output becomes non-linear to the input, which results in particular audio effects. Now, this can be broken down into compression and distortion, so let's look at the compression part of saturation first. So imagine an incoming electrical signal is being run through an electrical component like a transistor. So as long as the incoming electrical signal is within a certain range, it can be output at the same level that its input. Now, when the output of a signal is equal to the input, we call that relation linear, due to how it appears on a graph as a linear line. Now, it looks a lot like a compressor graph, so let's take a look at that. Now, in it we see a linear line which represents an equal input to output ratio. Numerically, this is represented as a 1-to-1 ratio. This 1-to-1 ratio should also look familiar, as compressors use the same numerics when they're displaying the compressor's ratio. For example, a common compressor ratio is 2-to-1, meaning that every 2 dB of input above a threshold is output as 1 dB. So what would happen if the incoming signal became too strong for the physical components of a transistor to handle? Well, the signal could no longer be output at the same rate it was being input, which would lead to a nonlinear relationship between the input and output. This is very similar to a compressor's ratio. So if this transistor is being overloaded, so to speak, then compression will occur. This is the first aspect of saturation, dynamic control or compression. Saturation introduces something called soft knee compression, which means that the input to output ratio gradually becomes more aggressive. At lower levels of being overloaded, the transistor's input to output ratio may be 2-to-1, but at higher levels it might be 4-to-1. Now, this too can be observed when you're looking at a compressor, as most have soft knee settings as an option, the opposite of which is called hard knee. Next, let's cover the distortion part of saturation. Now, when a signal becomes saturated enough through the same process that we just described, it not only compresses, but it distorts. The distortion is an alteration to the shape of a waveform. However, it's a little more complex than that. When a signal begins to distort, or when the waveform begins to become misshapen, small spikes in amplitude begin to form. Now, these spikes in amplitude are called harmonics. Harmonics are directly tied to the incoming signal in that they are multiples of the original signal, hence the name harmonics, as they exist harmoniously with the original signal. So let's say that we have a 200 Hz sine wave that is being run through a tube at a high enough amplitude to saturate the tube. So the saturation causes distortion, which results in the generation of harmonics. Let's say this distortion results in a harmonic at 400 Hz and a harmonic at 600 Hz. Now, these harmonics are called a second and third order harmonic, with the first order being the original 200 Hz sine wave. Harmonic distortion occurs to any signal that saturates an electrical component and varies greatly based on many different variables. Now, these variables include the type of electrical component used, the amount of incoming signal and/or saturation, the frequency and other aspects of the incoming signal, and a lot of other variables. So now that we better understand what saturation is, let's talk a little bit more about distortion. Now, distortion, as it relates to audio, is the altering of a waveform from its original state and shape. Now, common forms of distortion include harmonic distortion, which we just discussed, noise, intermodulation distortion, phase distortion and cancellation, and bit depth distortion, all of which can vary greatly depending on multiple variables. Now, technically speaking, since distortion is the altering of a waveform from its original state, almost every form of audio processing is a form of distortion. But when we think about distortion, what we primarily think of is harmonic distortion, as its sound is the one that we most commonly associate with distortion. Now keep in mind though that distortion is everywhere and in every form of processing, even in the cleanest forms of digital processing. Next, let's compare tube, transistor, and tape saturation so that we better understand them. Now, although different tube types will result in different sounds, tube distortion is often characterized as having a strong second-order harmonic, resulting in an almost doubling effect of the original signal. Now, tube saturation sounds full when compared to other forms of saturation, as the harmonic generated is at a lower pitch. Now, keep in mind that the harmonics generated and the amount of compression will depend on a lot of variables, so the description that I just provided is definitely generalized. Let's take a listen to it. Now, transistor saturation is often characterized by mid to high order harmonic generation, meaning that it causes the signal it distorts to sound brighter and more defined. With that said, transistor saturation causes the signal it distorts to sound more apparent and to cut through busy instrumentation. Now, again, keep in mind that this description is generalized and it's going to depend on the type of transistor that you're using. Now, tape saturation is different than other forms of saturation in that it doesn't include electrical components in the traditional sense, but instead has to do with magnetic particles embedded in the tape. When a signal is strong enough, it reorients all of the particles available, resulting in saturation. Additionally, tape saturation often includes other forms of saturation due to the amplification used to impart the signal onto the tape. These amplifiers often use transistors and tubes, meaning that saturation can occur at multiple points during the signal chain. So these are our thoughts on the differences between distortion and saturation, but what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, if you're an artist, an engineer, or a producer, you can send us one of your mixes at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample. All you gotta do is set up the short account, upload the song, and we'll do the rest. But thank you so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and share this video with your friends. This way we know if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Also, you can subscribe to the channel. We release new videos every week, and subscribing is the best way to stay up to date. There's a comment section where you can leave your thoughts on this video or make a suggestion for a future video. And again, if you're an artist or an engineer and you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you and send you a free mastered sample. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.